It's just a cold ride. You'll be fine if you sleeve it off. H. I couldn't believe what my husband just said. He was planning to leave me running a high fever and our young daughter to attend a friend's wedding overseas. And off he went, generally excited about his trip. But little did he know a surprising twist awaited him. I am Allison, a 35-year-old stay-at-home mom. I live with my husband David and our 5-year-old daughter Misty. Misty loves reading picture books. She's a sweet, kind-hearted girl who laughs a lot, my pride and joy. David has many friends and is well-versed in various hobbies. His stories were always entertaining. He was the man I was proud to be with. I believed that marrying someone as wonderful as David would lead to a happy marriage, and it was blissful in the beginning. Our newlywed life was sweet, and we were blessed with a child fairly quickly. I quit my job when I got pregnant, as per David's request. I gave birth to Misty without any issues. That's when things changed. He changed drastically after the birth. David started calling me fat because I couldn't lose the baby weight. He would say, "You're not attractive anymore. Make an effort to lose some weight." Struggling with first-time parenting, I was also criticized for not keeping up with household chores. I did ask David for help, but he yelled, "Don't be lazy. You eat, but can't even handle chores or childcare." Unbelievable. David seemed to resent that his time was being consumed by household duties and childcare. I was shocked to discover this selfish side of him, especially after he was so happy about the pregnancy. If I ever asked David for help, he would complain to neighbors and relatives that I was neglecting my duties, making me feel ashamed. I became hesitant to confront David. I was afraid he would spread more false stories about me. But the biggest issue was money. When it was just the two of us, we both contributed to a joint account and spent the rest freely. After Misty was born, David took over the finances since I had no income. But he hardly gave any money for living expenses. He once told me to manage on just $300 for the three of us. Stress. I couldn't produce enough breast milk, so Misty was on formula and diapers. $300 was nowhere near enough. When I tried to save by cooking budget meals, David would get furious, saying, "Don't serve me this cheap-smelling food." I even suggested getting a job to help out, but David looked down on me, saying, "You can't even handle housework, let alone work and raise a child. You're planning to slack off and make me do everything, aren't you? Just manage with the money I give you." David was absolutely against me working, perhaps fearing it would add to his household responsibilities. Now that Misty is 5, David seems to have lost interest in her. He often ignores her when she tries to talk to him, preferring to play with his phone instead. I thought marrying David would lead to a happy family, but I was completely wrong. Seeing Misty downcast because David ignores her and won't play with her breaks my heart. Then one day, I discovered that David had used the money we had been saving for Misty's education. I'm not working, and I think we are barely making ends meet each month. David is supposed to be managing our finances, but he won't tell me how much we are saving. Maybe we are not saving at all and running a deficit each month. That might be why he dipped into the education fund. When I asked David about it, he refused to disclose what he had spent the money on. Finally, he snapped, "I earned this money, so how I spend it is my business. You and Misty eat because of me, so stop complaining." I tried to discuss the money issue multiple times, but David wouldn't budge. Our conversations went nowhere. Then David dropped a bombshell. A friend invited me to their wedding overseas. I couldn't believe my ears. Even if his friends cover some travel expenses, going overseas would still cost a fair amount. We are in a situation where we can't even afford Misty's education, and how can we afford an overseas trip? I tried to discuss this, but David ignored me and started preparing for the trip. Honestly, I considered divorce, but thinking of Misty held me back. She only has one father, and I couldn't bring myself to take that away from her. The day before David's departure arrived, and I was stuck with a high fever. I hadn't had a fever in a long time, and this might be the first time as an adult. Headaches, nausea, dizziness, and body aches clouded my consciousness. "Can you please skip the wedding? I'm really struggling with this fever," I asked weakly. David laughed and said, "You'll be fine if you sleep it off." He even added, "Stop being so needy. Handle it yourself. You can't even manage yourself, and you are not even working. Could you at least get some food for Misty? She hasn't eaten properly since yesterday." I pleaded. David sighed heavily and said, "I don't have time for that, and I don't want to catch anything. I'm staying in the hotel tonight." And he really did leave us to attend the overseas wedding. At that moment, suffering from a high fever, I made up my mind for Misty's sake. I had to let go of such a selfish man like David. 5 days later, David returned in high spirits. "I'm back. Why are Dad and Mom here? David's parents are in the living room. My parents-in-law don't answer. What's going on? Where is Allison?" It was Misty who answered David's question. "Mom is in heaven now." "What? What are you talking about?" Thinking Misty was joking, David burst into laughter. His parents shook their heads in disbelief. "What a foolish thing you've done. It's too late for anything now." David looked bewildered, not understanding the meaning of their words. "Wait, did Allison really die from that high fever?" Muttering this, David watched as his parents left the house with Misty. Misty waved at her father. "Bye-bye, David." As usual, he ignored her. His parents got in the car. That was the plan. My parents and I were quietly waiting in the kids' room. I had my phone connected to my in-laws and was watching the living room through a hidden camera on my computer. My sister, who was waiting nearby, would pick up Misty since there were things we didn't want her to hear. Only my in-laws remained in the car. While David was overseas, I had told both sets of parents about his terrible behavior. I wanted to divorce David, but I knew he would refuse to pay alimony or child support. So I wanted them to know the truth to help with the divorce. I told Misty she might not see David again, and because she said she wanted to see him one last time, I had the in-laws stay in the living room. Misty didn't object to not seeing her father again. She might have understood, even at her young age, that her father was treating her poorly. I had to prioritize Misty's care from now on. I wonder how David would react to Misty's words that Mom is in heaven. Would he reflect on his actions or apologize in tears? I continued to watch the hidden camera in silence. But then David did something unexpected. He suddenly started making a phone call. His voice was elated. "Brianna, I don't know the details yet, but it seems my wife is dead. Finally, the obstacle is gone. I should get the insurance money. Let the old folks raise Misty. Let's live together. You're the only one I love, Brianna." We realized then that David had been having an affair, and he considered me and our child obstacles, planning to use the insurance money to remarry this woman. My parents, who were watching the hidden camera footage with me, were also furious since I was on the phone with my in-laws. They had heard David's voice too. They were also angry at David. I signaled to my parents and my in-laws, and we all moved to the living room where David was. Seeing this, David hung up the phone in shock. "Wait, Allison, but I thought you were in heaven." I couldn't help but laugh at David's stupidity. Heaven is what Misty calls her room. It has sky blue sheets and white pillows. You wouldn't know because you never talked to her. "Wait, is that so?" I thought. No, never mind. David, not realizing we had heard his phone call, tried to cover up his tracks, but it was too late. "Stop making excuses. We have been watching you on a hidden camera. You left your family with high fevers to go to a wedding, and you have been having an affair." "No, that's not true. I haven't been. I cut him off. No more excuses. The decision is made. We are getting a divorce, and I'll be seeking alimony and child support, so be prepared." After I spoke, my father-in-law yelled, his face red with anger, "If you get divorced, never show your face here again. You're no longer our son." Right after that, David's cell phone rang, filling the room with his ringtone. David didn't move, so I grabbed his phone to check. The caller was Brianna, David's mistress. I answered the call and put it on speaker so everyone could hear. "Hello, what was that call about earlier? Living together is a joke, right? I have a fiance, so stop getting the wrong idea. I can't be with a delusional man. Don't contact me again." With that, she hung up. Now dumped by his mistress too, David turned pale and groveled at my feet, begging for forgiveness. "I'm sorry, please forgive me. If my family disowns me, you're the only one I can rely on. Plus, I can't afford to pay alimony or anything like that. I've already spent so much on Brianna during this trip." David started rambling even though no one asked him to explain. I glared at him. "So you didn't go to a wedding. You abandoned your family for a romantic getaway." Oh well, you see, David couldn't find the words to defend himself. To think he was foolish enough to abandon his family and ruin himself by confessing an affair. I wondered why I ever married such an idiot. I should have decided to divorce him much sooner. Watching David continue to make a fool of himself, I resolved to move on with my life, just Misty and me. Later, I checked David's phone and found numerous photos and videos from his trip with his mistress. The story about attending a friend's wedding was clearly a lie. I took this evidence to a lawyer. I formally filed for a divorce, seeking compensation and child support. The lawyer visited Brianna, who apparently works at a nightclub, to verify the amount David had spent on her. She claimed she was just entertaining an old man as part of her job, but David foolishly insisted they were in love, causing a big fuss. It became clear that David had been financially supporting Brianna. That's probably why he had been giving me so little for living expenses and even dipping into Misty's college fund. David's life became miserable, burdened with debt from his lavish spending and now additional compensation. It also turned out that he lost his standing at his company when his affair and romantic trips came to light. Apparently, the nightclub where Brianna works is a popular spot for David's colleagues, so David confronted Brianna, causing a scene. Some of David's co-workers were there, and word of their affair spread throughout the company. I guess he confronted her because he didn't know she was engaged, but I can't be sure. It's pathetic how he let a young woman manipulate him. This incident led to David becoming isolated at work. He really is a hopeless case. I heard David got demoted and took a significant pay cut. The lawyer who helped me with the divorce and alimony also updated me on Brianna's situation. It seems she met a grim end too. Her fiancé, a regular at the club, found out about her affair with David and called off their engagement. He even demanded compensation for the wedding expenses they had already incurred. Struggling to pay the hefty sum, Brianna tried to swindle money from other customers, but of course, you can't keep something like that a secret. As expected, the club found out and fired her. Now, Brianna is working multiple part-time jobs to pay off her debts, living alone in a cramped apartment. As for me, I moved back home and am living with my parents and Misty. I'm relieved to be away from the neighbors who believe the rumors and lies David spread about me. Life is much more relaxed now. My parents dote on Misty, who seems happier than when she lived with David. David has come to my parents' house a few times, begging for another chance, but my dad has been turning him away. Neither Misty nor I have any desire to see him. If Misty ever says she wants to see him, I'll consider it, but for now she doesn't want to meet her father. I have no intention of reconciling with David, so there's no reason to talk to him. If he becomes too persistent, I'm considering involving the police. Looking at where David and his mistress Brianna are now, I realize how scary a force can be. They have lost everything and are forced to live a bottom-tier life. It's their own fault. From now on, I want to focus on cherishing the happiness I have with my parents and Misty and forget about David.